My name is Melania Ayana and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you guys how I turn my client's long hair into a short, cute, curly bob. You're going to want to start with a middle part and clipping one side out of the way because we are about to start pre-parting. To achieve this look, you can either do small parts or medium parts, but because my client wanted her bob really full, we ended up doing small parts, and that required 6 rows. So what I'm going to do is just part this first row and part it out of the way. And the pre-parting process, you don't have to add gel, you don't have to make your parts super perfect, because we're going to go in once it's time to braid and clean up with gel. Now once you part that second row, you're going to take that top section and you're going to split it in half vertically, because this is going to allow you to see the parts fully according to your client's head shape, and this is going to allow you to fully see if the parts are even or not. The reason why you want to part your client's hair in sections is because it's a lot harder to part one entire row across the scope of your client's head without fully seeing if the parts are accurate or even or not. So splitting your client's hair in sections will allow you to get the most accurate parting quicker and easier to make even parts. Another important tip when you are pre-parting is to make sure that there is a slight curve once you get above those first 2 rows, because our client's head are circular, so you want to make sure that there is a slight curve once you get to the top, and I'm going to show you guys what I mean here in just a second. But yes, make sure that there's a slight curve. As you can see, I was kind of curving my comb a little bit because you want to make sure that the part or the section is completely rounded to your client's head from one side of the head to the other. As you can see, there is a slight curve once I got to the top of my client's head, and that is what it should look like. So go ahead and screenshot that if you need to. But now I'm going to repeat the same exact thing on the other side. Once you are finished pre-parting, this is what it should look like. You should be able to see if everything is even or not. To achieve this look, I used 32 inches of the Expressions 3-in-1, and I also used the M Human Hair Water Bulk texture. Now that it is time to start braiding, you are going to take out the first 2 rows, the row that you're about to braid and the row right above it. The reason why you want to take out the braid above it as well is because when you go to part your client's hair, you don't want to pull out her hair, so you want to make sure that you take out that row above it at least, and make sure that you are parting a clean, fresh line. You just want to make sure that you are taking your time with this pre-parting process, because with these kinds of braids, even though the curls will mainly cover it, you just want to make sure that your client's parts are clean and crispy. So just make sure that you are taking your time with this process, because once the gel is applied, it'll be a lot harder to move the hair around. So make sure you are using a steady hand and taking your time. Now you're going to part that first row into 4 equal sections and twist them out the way so you can see if they're all the same size. Now that it is time to start braiding, you are going to apply a little amount of gel onto your client's part, all 4 sides to be exact, and comb it all the way through. You don't have to use as much gel as you would for like a large knotless braid, but still apply just a slight amount of gel, and then you're going to separate your part into 3 equal sections and then feed in hair through your thumb and index finger. Again, I'm going to show you what that looks like right here between the thumb and the index, and then you're going to add the hair in. This is just a quick feed in tutorial. And now I'm going to show you guys how you can make your client's long hair appear short in a short bob. Now, depending on how long your client's hair is, you're going to want to only braid about maybe 2 or 3 inches. And then you are going to flip your client's strand in half, depending on how short she wants it, and then feed in the rest of the hair on the other side like you would braiding hair. Now you have to secure one strand at a time, so just make sure that you are securing each of the strands by themselves before moving on to flipping the next strand in. And just take those ends, apply a little bit of gel and product to sleek it down, so that your braid down process is still as smooth as possible. And as you can see, I'm braiding her hair down regular, and then you're just going to want to make sure that you're covering up those blunt ends now with the braiding hair so that it's still smooth. And there you have it, you guys. You should be able to turn your client's long hair into a short bob. Now, of course, not all lengths are going to be able to get a bob this short, because sometimes that's just how it happens when your client has super long hair. But you can also always make your client's long hair shorter than it appears. Once you have completed the braids, you're going to take at least 2 braids at a time and wrap it around the perm rod, and then we're going to move on to the next row and do what we call bricklayer parting. Now, the reason we call this bricklayer parting is because it is similar to the structure that construction workers have when they are building a brick house. The bricks are staggered and stacked on top of each other versus directly stacked on top of each other. So each braid is going to fall in between every other braid. Now, I didn't feed in any curls on the bottom row simply because the curls can not only weigh down the hairs at the nape of the neck, but it can also be a lot harder to manage the bob when it comes to the hairs needing some maintenance. Now, the exact same way that I feed in braiding hair is the exact same way that you are going to feed in the boho curls. You're going to feed it in and then take the curl that's being left out and pin it out the way. Make sure that the curl is sitting on top of the braid, and then repeat the exact same method that I showed you guys earlier in order to, flip your client's hair up into the braid. Now, keep in mind that because we're having to modify the client's length, this is going to take a little bit longer than if we were just to braid down to the length of her actual hair. So just keep in mind that this takes a little bit longer and a little bit more patience. For fullness, you're going to add about 2 to 3 pieces of boho hair onto each braid, and then the next row you're going to increase the amount of boho pieces, and so on and so forth. So this row you'll add about 2 to 3 pieces, the next row you'll add about 3 or 4 pieces, and then the next row you'll add about 4 to 5 pieces, and then 5 to 6 pieces. And this is going to ensure that you have a full bob. Now, because I want to shorten my maintenance, I'm going to trim those flyaway hairs out the way and then perm rod my curls right away, so that this makes my dipping process and my finishing touches process a lot easier. Another way that you can shorten your finishing touches process is by clipping your curls out the way. I didn't get to show you guys in this video, but you want to make sure that each time you put away curls, you are pinning them away to the sides. You can kind of see it here a little bit. I had the curls pinned to the side, but now it is time for us to braid through the last 2 rows. And what I like to do with the last 2 rows is part it as if I was about to braid all the way and pin them out the way so that I can make sure that her middle part is aligned and straight. As a professional, even though you've applied the gel and product, you want to make sure that your client's rows are still even. So I had to go in and take away some from the top half and then readjust again, because I want to make sure her parts are all crispy, even, and accurate. Now, because these rows are curved, the bricklayer parting is not exactly going to be that simple, because your parts will slightly look like a trapezoid instead of a box. So you just want to make sure that you're paying attention to that and making sure that the parts are staggered and not stacked on top of each other. Now, again, like I said, because these are the last 2 rows, I like to fully see everything and make sure that everything is aligned and right with her middle part. So I'm going to go ahead and pre-part these parts out the way as well and twist them out the way. Now that you're at the top of your client's head, you can determine whether or not you should flip her hair up or not, because the length will either match the same length as the bob, go past the length of the bob, or reach the length of the bob. And with this, my client's hair kind of reached the length of the bob. I still had to flip it up just a little bit as when I got to the ends, so I didn't have to flip it as soon as I started braiding and feeding in like I initially showed you guys in the beginning. So just be mindful of that, and that will help you also with turning your client's long hair into a bob. Remember to clip your curls out the way, as you can see. And now that we're on the last braid, I turned my hot tea kettle on so that the water can be ready once I am done. And I'm just going to repeat this process, and because we are at the top, like I said, I'm going to add in the maximum amount of curls. I think I added in about 5 curls here, and you can always add more to make it fuller, but in this case I didn't need to. Now, another tip you are going to want to be mindful of is adding in the curls about 1 inch away from each other. Now, this is going to ensure that the braid bob is not only super full, but it's also going to give it that weave aesthetic and cover the braids. Now, again, I want to highlight that you will want to cut away the flyaway hairs, and then because this is a bob, you want to make sure that her front pieces are even, because it can happen, it can be uneven sometimes. So just make sure that the curls are sitting at the exact same points so that the bob is even and you don't have to do as much work. And another tip, sometimes these perm rods with the curls, they don't stay on. So sometimes I do add in a little bit of gel just to make sure that they are secured on there. Now, before you go and dip your client's hair, you just want to make sure that you trim away all the flyaway hairs. So just go in there and double check and make sure that there are no flyaway hairs, because that is something hot water cannot fix, okay? So just make sure you do that, and then once you are ready to dip, you're going to pull all of her curls up and out the way. And because this is a bob, I couldn't dip her hair directly into the kettle, so I had to pour it over my shampoo bowl. So if you have like a bucket and you're doing this at home, just make sure that your client is laid back so that you can do this, because it's going to be a little bit hard to dip your client's braid directly inside of the pot. And you just want to make sure that you are taking your time with this process as well, because this is extremely hot water, and sometimes you can run out of water and not even have covered all the curls. So make sure that you are covering all of your client's curls, and once you are done, you're going to blow dry them a little bit and then start taking them bad boys off. Once you are done taking those perm rods off, you're going to separate the curls and then let all her curls loose, because it is time to get this bob bobbing, okay? You're gonna want to split this in sections because this is a lot of hair and curls can be deceiving sometimes. So just make sure that you are trimming in sections and making sure that they're all the same length. Only cut a little bit off at a time, because it's a lot easier to fix something when you haven't already cut it all off. So just make sure that you are taking your time with this and cutting a little bit at a time and work your way up. And as you can see me pulling the curls down, curls can really be deceiving. So you just want to make sure that you're pulling them down, pulling the flyaway hairs out, moving the bob around, and really seeing what it's going to look like on your client, and then go ahead and trim as needed. Sometimes you may even have to tell your client to put her head down or sit her head up so that you can fully see what this bob is going to look like on her. Now it is time to do your client's baby hairs. Even if your client doesn't have any baby hairs, you still want to make sure that all her edges are sleeked up and brushed back. If you guys want a direct edge tutorial, then please just let me know in the comment box and I will do so. But now that you are done with her baby hairs and cutting and trimming, you're going to apply the mousse to tame those curls. And this is also going to give you a better sculpt of what your client's bob will really look like, because this is a bob, y'all. Y'all really want to make sure that this bob is bobbing, it's cut, it's clean, and there's no flyaways, no stragglers. And as you can see, there are some flyaways and stragglers. So after you apply that mousse, you're going to go in and trim and just make sure everything is straight and symmetric. Sometimes you might even have to hold the curls in place because some of them can be a little thick, and you might have to lift up your client's hair as well to see if there are any pieces that need to be cut. Now, once you are done with that process, you are completely done with the bob, and it should look like this. It should look full, it should be free flowing, there should be no stragglies, and your client should be smiling happy. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. I will see you guys in the next video.